Howdy! So I got to play an early preview look at Lirai, Heir of Darkness. This is a new 3D action game. It seems to be very inspired by Devil May Cry style of gameplay. You're playing this character who's running around destroying zombies. So the preview I played starts you off on this road, and then you kind of veer off into this little city. And you're kind of hack and slash enemies on your way through. And as you're going through, you're doing little tasks, like you're pulling on levers and you're trying to find your way to the next area. So this is an early preview, so all of the game graphically and all that is, still being developed. A lot of the assets are still being worked on, and I don't really get a sense of what the story is. It kind of just throws you in and just goes, hey, go forward and do these things. And so hopping in, sometimes there'll be flashes to other characters, and you have no idea who or what that is, or what that has to do with anything, or why it's flashing towards this person. And it makes the experience a little awkward. But having said that, the gameplay was fun. I did try to use controller, but it wasn't working super well, so I went to mouse and keyboard. And you'd be hacking to slash enemies, and then you build up a meter. And once you build it up, use this button to kind of unleash your superpower, and you get all sort of flamed up, and you can slice and dice a whole bunch of enemies at once. But there's also abilities to do stealth. So through a lot of my experience, you come up one or two enemies at a time, and you can sneak behind them and do like a one-hit stealth kill, or you can just hack and slash them a couple times. Some enemies are just kind of hanging around, just straight up like trying to bite you. Other enemies have like this acidic stuff that spits at you, which you gotta be careful of, because once it hits you, it starts draining your health pretty quickly. Now for this preview, I did get the chance to get a lot of like potions and everything, so I was able to kind of get through the experience that way. And you have the option to kind of scroll through different potions, and basically they heal you up to a certain percentage. Like one heals up your health fully, one partway through, and then one a tiny bit. And then as you're fighting the enemies and building up this combo meter, sometimes you can also kind of finish off with like super combo attack. That'll do like one big slice move that'll hit a bunch of enemies around you. So you also come across these horde of zombies, and that's where that special ability I mentioned earlier kind of comes into play, where you get super powered, because you get overwhelmed surprisingly pretty quick. Even it being a big sword you're carrying around, you're like, oh, I can keep them at bay, but they'll overwhelm you really fast. And sometimes it got to a point where I was like stuck, where I couldn't move, and I'm like, how am I gonna get out of here? I felt just so congested. So it was interesting to experience that. I don't know if I love that necessarily, because then I was getting a little bit more frustrated with experience. There is like climbing, but it kind of does a thing where you're climbing and the game does it itself. You're not actually doing the climbing. There's not really jumping. You're just kind of walking over knockdown stuff to hop over to another area. And like I said, most of the interactions are either like pulling down levers, or sometimes you come across a chest, and these chests will get you different money amounts, which I never really got to use that for anything. Or like an example I played, I had to get these gear pieces to be able to operate some machinery, so I can get this piece to warp to a different area. So for the second half, the area was a lot smaller. It was just an arena sort of area. Once I went through the warp hole, I go collect these keys, use the keys to unlock this gateway, and I go in for a boss fight. Yeah, so this enemy, you fight it one-on-one, and the enemy AI is a little all over the place. Sometimes it just sits there and not do anything. Other times it'll just hack and slash you to death and keep doing this like dash move. So you just kind of have to be careful. Once you are fighting the boss for a little bit, then it'll kind of go to a new phase where it starts doing different sorts of attacks. And you just kind of have to dodge your way around. It took me a couple tries to get through him, but I did beat him. And then once I beat him, it kind of showed a scene or two and wrapped up the demo there. The experience I played was maybe like a half hour or so, if that, maybe even like 20 minutes. It's literally like two small little areas just to give you a taste of what this game would be like. But I really didn't have any context as far as what the story is or who these characters are that I keep seeing. It was mostly just to focus on, this is what the gameplay is going to be like. So I'm curious to keep an eye out on this game. That does fall into the vein of games I'm usually interested in playing, these hack and slashes. So I'd like to see it improve over time and hope to see, you know, the final product be all filtered and fleshed out, and I hope it does really well. This is mostly from a single developer, so that's something else to keep in mind. So be sure to keep an eye out for this one, y'all, in the near future.